Hey people, here's a little quick tip on the topic of false chord scream, or you might be more familiar with the terms death growl or even grunt. Doesn't really matter what we call it, we're talking about this sound. The shape is variable, the underlying technique is the same. If you're not sure what exactly the underlying technique is, if you don't know the terms false fold distortion, a written note rattle, and so on, I recommend you watch my Rough Vocal Effects Revisited episode 4 first, where I go into detail about these things. Today I want to talk more about the stylistics. What's the difference between like old school death metal versus more contemporary deathcore, for example? And I think there's some major differences in what tissues are being used. If I think about the old school death metal sound, I have something like this in mind, right? Or maybe even like with a lot of voice in there. The amount of pitch can vary, but what both of these versions have in common is there's not a lot of false fold distortion in there. It's funny, even though we call it false chord scream, they don't actually have to be involved. It's more of a soft kind of air-driven grunty strategy where the true folds contribute a bit of noise, and then the arytenoids might contribute a bit of that low rumble. And as it's more air-driven, we also usually have softer onsets or even breathy onsets, like that. The phrases cannot be too long as we waste a lot of air. I can show you how long I can sustain such a breathy kind of death growl. That's going to be roughly my second timer. Not even 5 seconds. It's not a lot of air. Of course, there's ways to compress it, but then that's going to be a different style. If I add my false folds, that's going to be a bit harsher. That's going to require more of a glottal onset or heart attack like this. And that will enable me to sustain it a bit longer. Let's try more of the contemporary deathcore version. So that's maybe 7 seconds. It's a bit longer. It's not the longest ever yet. So if we want to sustain it even longer, if we want to do like super extreme, I don't even know what it's called. It's not grindcore. You guys know the genres better than I do. But it's like if we want to do a super low, long, like nasty thing, it helps to use some of these tongue shapes, the gutturals, for example, because they provide even more back pressure, so we waste even less air. And then it also helps to go into kind of a, like, I don't know how to describe it, but you can see this kind of weird posture that you also see on stage. It's not just theatrics, right? It really has a technical effect on what I do. I'm not gonna count the seconds this time, but you can just read the seconds on the display, because I'm gonna go into this weird posture. I'm gonna use my tongue shape. I'm gonna use all of the tissues, so the highest possible kind of resistance to my airflow. And it's gonna sound like this. Like that, right? So that one, that's at least twice the sustain of my first version. I think almost 3 times as long. And that's something you hear after like 2005, maybe 2010. It's not something you hear in 90s death metal. You might hear brutal lows there already, but it's a different kind of brutal. It's not this smooth kind of thing that I just showed. It's more rumbly, it's more dirty. You might hear more voice in it. Actually, having more of a true fold pitch in there doesn't make it less aggressive. It might even make it a bit more aggressive because it's more human. It's more it's more of this primal kind of energy, right? Whereas if I go for like super atonal stuff and then also weird pitches, like this kind of underlying thing, where you don't really hear it, but you notice something's off. This wasn't really pitched, but I was trying to send it up there. Or if I use tongue shapes like the tunnel, this kind of thing. That sounds less human. It sounds more animalistic, right? So that's more of a deathcore kind of approach, right? So I hope I could help you a bit if you're experimenting with false chord scream, but you feel that sometimes it still tickles, or you get tired very quickly. Send me a message. I hope I can help you. Watch my video series, the Rough Vocal Effects 101 original series and the revisited thing, if you have enough time for both. But yeah, maybe some of your questions will be answered already there.